we kind of look at things kind of on a three-tier scale. You have your story, your narrative, and your brand. The story is just the stuff that happens that you want to tell. The narrative is the once upon a time and how you tell it. And then the brand, I say, is the swag. It's your logo. It's the website. It's the stuff people see and interact with. And, kind of that's the simple way to break these three things down. So a lot of times people haven't thought about the first two steps, that story and the narrative. So they kind of jump to, I need a logo. They jump to, I need a website, or we need to get brand recognition, or something along those lines. But what they're trying to communicate just hasn't been set yet. So you think, Apple, they started in a garage. Lots of companies, you say they started in a garage. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, he, was selling books out of his trunk and, was personally packaging them and mailing them. Those are the things people kind of remember. Again, they're the stories that those companies have told, and they've put it together very well. That brand element is what people see.
What if your next client came from one strategic shift? You are listening to Iconic Entrepreneurs, the podcast for founders and brand builders who want to scale with clarity, not chaos. I'm Erica Bailey, CEO of Iconic and your host, and every week we sit down with bold minds who know how to grow. If you're new here, welcome. And if you've missed our recent heavy hitters, go back and catch branding legend Brandon Coleman Jr. on truth and alignment, or maybe sales strategist Ron Koningsberg in our 3-part series, Sales, What They Don't Teach You in School, and growth expert Courtney Durand on scaling to 12 million with clarity over burnout. Every episode is a masterclass, and today is no different. Hello, and welcome back to Iconic Entrepreneurs. This is the podcast where bold strategy meets real-world execution. I am your host, Erica Bailey, and as always, I like to start off with gratitude. I am grateful for my guest today. I'm grateful that you continue to join me and come back and listen to my chaos. And so I'm grateful. What are you grateful for today? Think about it while you listen. Today's guest is a powerhouse in strategic communication and brand storytelling. We're going to have fun. Joining me is Joshua Altman, Managing Director of Beltway.Media. Is a DC-based creative and communications firm helping organizations from startups to federal agencies craft messaging that move people and drive results. He has over 2 decades of experience across the public and private sectors. Joshua has led high-impact campaigns, covered election cycles and policy as a multimedia journalist for The Hill, and modernized the digital presence of multiple U.S. government agencies. Whether he's helping founders win over investors or guiding federal teams through full-scale rebrands, Joshua brings clarity, precision, and a deep understanding of how to connect with diverse audiences in this noisy world. We are digging into what it really takes to elevate your message and why the way you say things can be just as important as what you're selling. Joshua, welcome to Iconic Entrepreneurs.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. So let's just dive into this, man. First, let's start. I want to hear more about your backstory. Like, how did your journey in communications and media begin? And what led you to launch Beltway Media? Did I say that right? Is it the name? All right. Okay, perfect. So tell me about you, man. Like, how did this whole thing start? This is an interesting niche.
Yes, it is. And I wish I can say it started with some sort of grand plan or, strategy document. Like, we tell people they should do. It didn't do that at all, and kind of happened organically or even accidentally, some people might say. Like you said, I started my career as a journalist at the Hill newspaper. I went to journalism school before that. I did my master's in communication, culture, and technology. And I thought I would spend my career as a journalist. That's not ultimately what happened. I left journalism. I left the Hill. I thought I would be a freelance reporter going everywhere, doing everything. That didn't work out. There was, a company that needed a project here, a company that needed a project there, and ultimately sort of turned into what I do now. There was no conscious, let me sit down and map this all out, because if I had, it wouldn't have ended up here.
That makes sense. I mean, everything happens for a reason in the right time, right?
Exactly.
Why journalism?
I love it. Yeah, it's something I've always loved and loved doing. It was a great job to do. I enjoy what I do now, and I enjoy doing that as well.
So, how did you go from journalism to basically brand storytelling and getting involved in government agencies? Like, where was that jump?
Yeah, so my education and my career was all in the DC area. I went to GW and then Georgetown. I worked at the Hill newspaper. So I was already in the DC kind of ecosystem. So going into government is just not, here it's not that much of a jump. A lot of people go between the private sector and government agencies. So that was fairly easy from that perspective. It wasn't a mind blowing leap,
Mind
at
blowing.
least in the DC area. Then I was, like you said, a multimedia producer. So my background was in video. It was in shooting, editing, producing, writing, all of that. So I have a background as a tech,
Okay.
really on the technical side. And doing that was what really led me into doing much more with brands and corporate clients, because they were looking for, especially some of those early projects were, we need a website overhaul, tech and content. So having someone who could do both of those was really what they were looking for. So that was kind of where that fit in. And now I'm probably not the person pushing the buttons most of the time on the tech side. Still important to do and keep your skills sharp, but I am not the person who's always doing it. But what that background allows me to do is work with both, my team and, clients' internal teams who are the technical side, and really know what they're doing and understand it at a much deeper level than people who don't have that production technical background.
That makes sense. I'm tracking. I'm tracking with you. But why did you leap into being an entrepreneur, to being a business owner? From almost, working for someone, right? Possibly freelancing a little bit, and then boom, I'm gonna be a business owner. That's a pretty big leap.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it wasn't planned. There was no, let me sit down and think this is what I'm going to do. I thought I would, be a freelance reporter for a few years and then kind of go back to a, news organization full time, and that would be it. That wasn't where it ended up. So it wasn't, I didn't sit down and think I will have a business. It was, I'm doing this stuff already. So we're going to just keep rolling with it.
That's actually how we started. I had just got my master's degree, and my husband had his bachelor's in technical communication. And we'd been working while I was getting my master's degree. I worked in like SEO, right? Link building back in the day.
Uh,
And he, his education, and I had marketing classes, and we're like, we couldn't find work. It was the end. It was right when like the housing market collapsed, and we lived in Arizona, and the whole economy just collapsed under our feet. We couldn't find work. And we had 3 kids at home. We were trying to figure out how to survive. And they wanted to pay us, $10 an hour to work at McDonald's. And it just was not going to fly. So, he'd work in sales for most of his life. And so kind of being his own boss almost was inherent for him. Me, I was like, oh my gosh, no way, we can't do this. Like, how do I know I'm going to get a paycheck every month? But we just said, you know what? We're going to try. We're going to try it. And we knew the stuff, and we just kind of continued to learn from there. And I think sometimes the best businesses actually start from oops or
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, let's try it. And all of a sudden you have iconiQ. So I like that because it just kind of puts you into this new world, but you were already doing it. So you built a business out of it. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about Beltway.media. So what all do you do there?
Yeah. So our primary thing is we provide fractional communications leadership, fractional chief communications officers for clients, which is very different from an agency model or a freelancer. We are fully embedded in your team. So that gives us real hands-on time with really the entire company because people are more familiar with the chief brand officer
Yes.
or a chief
Or chief
marketing
marketing
officer.
yeah.
Those are certainly common and they are in a large business really important to have. And a lot of smaller businesses, are starting to add them too. The chief communications officer is a little different. It combines branding and marketing into something that really also looks at your internal communications and all your stakeholders. Our focus is on shaping perception and building trust long term across all your stakeholders.
Okay. The building trust part and the
Mhm.
stakeholders. Like I don't think many people think outside of the people in the cubicles around you. Like you do have to build that relationship, that connection, that authenticity between your stakeholders. That's pretty that is unique. I don't think I've run into anybody like you before. This is kind of cool. This is kind of cool. Let's get into this. So, let's talk about a chief communications officer. Now, there's going to be plenty of people out there that knows what that means. But why don't you, in layman's terms, explain to me a chief communications officer and like what their role is in a business? And like, let's even touch on like the government agency stuff here. Like, this is
Yeah. So
fascinating.
the government stuff is a little different in terms of, it's not really a chief communications officer
Okay, so it's
role with
kind of two
government.
questions there. All right,
Yeah, there are
all
two
right. So
questions
let's
there. So
start with the
starting
first
with
one.
the first one is, like I said, you have your brand market on chief, brand officers, chief marketing officers. They kind of do their thing, which is important things and businesses need to focus on them. We are taking integrated big picture views of how you're messaging on all your channels to all your stakeholders influences reputation and growth. So it's much more how is your branding, how is your marketing, how is your investor relations, if that's something your business has, your internal communications with your employees, vendors, even. How is all of that affecting your growth and your reputation? And it's not just how is this advertising campaign affecting the people we want to reach? Are the metrics high on this campaign? Looking at that, of course, but also how is it affecting the campaign before it and 6 months after it? Because if you kind of dupe your audiences, pull a little bait and switch, they're going to remember that. So maybe you get away with that once with, some, paid ads, but you kind of dipped into that trust that you've kind of worked to build up. And now you got to build it again. So it's really focusing on how all of these different things work together. And it's very hands on, which is why being integrated into a team in that fractional way just makes a lot more sense. And, we work with agencies, clients have, their SEO firms also and their paid ad firms doing just those things. And a lot of times there might not be someone in a smaller business connecting those agencies who's really focusing on how all these things are working together. So you've put money into your SEO firm and they're doing their thing. And you put money into a firm that just does LinkedIn ads and they're doing their thing. But are those two things saying the same message? And if you're trying to raise money as, a startup, your investors are going to see things. They'll see ads too. They live in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
are they going to see these ads and will that influence your chance of getting money? And if you get it, how much? So it's really bringing a lot of pieces together, sometimes in house, sometimes with, agencies they've hired. It just depends.
So it's a synchronicity across all platforms, across
Yeah.
all medias. Basically, it's one person that's managing that whole breakdown because I see that often. Joshua, I see that often, especially the larger companies. They'll have multiple different agencies doing multiple different things, but those agencies are not communicating each other. And like we said, earlier, you were saying a lot of agency podcasts don't invite other agencies on because of that reason, right? But
Exactly.
we should be talking to each other because that benefits the client. And if the client is doing well, we're all doing well, right?
Yeah.
But having somebody in-house that can speak geek, as I call it, and really understand and make sure that they're communicating that messaging across all of the different, I guess, umbrellas of what you're doing. That's freaking brilliant, man. That's brilliant. And so you have a team of individuals, I'm just assuming a team of individuals who come in and take on that role, to bridge the gap in that communication. Is that?
Yeah. So it's bridging that gap, but also, again, it is hands-on. So we are working to develop that consistent storytelling. So if, again, it's fractional. So we are your person. We are your
Okay.
chief communications officer. If you need more, we are also a brand manager. If you need, multiple people in there.
Okay.
So it's all there for you, but you don't necessarily have these, expertise already. You might have started it. Maybe someone does, but they are now in a different role as your company grew. And this is no longer something they're able to have as their focus, which of course happens as companies grow. So we're there to really fill that need. And it is hands on. I keep saying that because it's true. You're not just going to hand it off to the agency, to do your LinkedIn ads or your Facebook ads or, your video or whatever it is you're having done. We're going to be part of that process. We're your in-house person now who's going to coordinate with those agencies. If you have agencies, if you want to do it in-house, we're also able to provide that for you.
Oh, okay. So talk to me about like the whole political side of things for you. Obviously, you're in DC. This is kind of, backyard stuff, but how did you get into that? And like, I guess, I've done a few like small political campaigns, but I've always struggled to adapt messaging and strategies within that. So talk me through how you work in that government sector or political sector.
Yeah. So government and political are very different. They're the
Really?
politics, the campaigns,
Okay.
which people running for office,
Okay.
state parties
Yeah.
doing, their messaging. But what I was doing, where I was contracting, was with government agencies. So the US Department of Justice, the US Department of Commerce. So those are very different from running for office.
Yes. Okay.
So don't want to just keep those separate. Those are not
Okay.
politics.
Thank
And
you.
they would not like being told that they are political. The career staff there are very proud of the fact that they are non-political. Said, politics come and goes. We outlive them. We are here when they come. We are here when they go. We stay through administrations. So very different.
All right. All right.
And usually with government is, at least where I was, you are on very specific tasks because the contracts as they exist in government are, a task to do this, a task to do that. So I was hired to work on particular contracts doing particular tasks. So communications at one agency at the US Department of Commerce and doing just, working with them to improve stakeholder communications. With the US Department of Justice, I was with one agency there also working on an interagency project that was just on our task because that's just how contracts are built in government, as opposed to where I work with, private companies. Our project is be our chief communications officer and a communications team. Very different scale of what we're providing.
Interesting. I knew none of this. I'm enjoying this conversation very much. This is phenomenal. All right. So like how do you address those communication needs or breaking points or the hands-on in government? It's got to be a
Yeah,
completely different beast
it
than,
is.
a business to business or a B2C even. Like it's
Oh,
got to
yeah.
be completely different.
Well, one of the big differences is when you're working with, say the Department of Justice, everything that's published, it's not from Acme Corp, that, a Series A startup that no one's ever heard of.
Okay.
That if you need to rebrand it in a year, go ahead and rebrand it. Companies do that all the time.
Yep.
It's coming from the US Department of Justice. It has a little bit more gravitas in some cases when it is being published by the US Department of Justice, as opposed to a Series A startup. So a lot of things in the government side they go through a lot more of a review process, because I mean, sometimes the number of reviewers is more than people at the number of people at the companies that are in that Series A range. Because, those are
Wow.
sometimes 10, 12 person companies.
Do you
So
ever get
everything goes through.
go ahead.
No,
Do you ever get imposter syndrome? Like when you're going into a government agency and saying, "Here, I can solve your problems." Like that has to be a little intimidating.
you can't let it look that way.
Guys, literally write that one down. We talk about imposter syndrome on my show all the time. You can't let it look that way. Okay. How do you do that? Like,
So again, I started my career as, a cameraman, a shooter, an editor. One of my first teachers many, many years ago, he said, just go, just stand there and if look like you belong and be confident doing it. And if you do that, maybe it'll work. People might not, push you away. You're holding a camera. It kind of looks official. So just walk on in. And yeah, so I've just kind of
do
kept
it.
doing that. It's the story that, you kind of hear the joke all the time. Walk in someone wearing a high vis vest and a clipboard in your hands and no one will question you. Similar premise. If you just gotta, even if you feel like you don't
You're gonna
belong or
throw up.
it's daunting, yeah, you just don't
Do
let it look that way. And I say this, I'm going to say something that will sound contradictory, is I see this, on the LinkedIn memes all the time, things never to say in a meeting. And one of them is, don't say you might be wrong. I say that all the time. Of course I could. I'm human. What we're saying could be wrong. As you know, in this communication space, it's not 1+1 will always equal 2. 1+1 might equal a dairy cow some days. So it's not going to always play the way you wanted it to.
1+1 might equal the dairy cow. Oh my gosh. I like that you say, don't be afraid to say, I'm wrong, or I could be wrong, or I don't know. Because again, we go back to authenticity, right? And if we are true to ourselves and true in front of those who we are pitching or, trying to help, that authenticity really does shine. And people connect to that, I
They
believe.
do.
I believe, yeah. And I actually ran into this the other day. It's so funny that you said that because I have a cannabis client here in Wyoming, and learning how to maneuver around social media is really hard for this industry.
Yes, it
And
is.
I had to sit down because we got taken down like twice and I could not figure out why. And I'm telling you, Joshua, I did so much research and I could not figure out why. And I sat down and I'm like, man, I don't know. Obviously, I was wrong, but I don't know where I went wrong. And I left in the moment feeling like I'm not capable of doing this. You know what I mean? Like, even though I know I am, and that's that
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, I'm not capable of doing this. But it's okay
Yeah.
to not always be right. Like, I'm human. I'm
Yeah.
not, oh my gosh.
And we say that all the time, but we dress it up and we're going to do some A/B testing and we'll
Uh-huh.
try different strategies. That's a fancy way to say this might not work.
This might not.
This strategy could be a little wrong, and we'll try a few things and tweak them, and we'll land on the right one. But it gets dressed up in a lot of cases, and we'll do A/B testing and run some small scale trials. People know what that means. It means you
We got to
might not
figure it
have
out.
it this time. We got to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I might as well just say what they know I'm saying.
Oh, that's bold, man. That's
I
bold,
know.
but it's that authenticity, like it's truth. And I think people, especially in today's age, and especially as we're getting into the younger generations, that's what they feed off of. They don't want your bullshit. Excuse my language,
No.
but they don't want your bullshit. They want to know, A, do you know what you're doing? And B, can you figure it out if you don't?
Yeah.
Right? And that's marketing, right? It's testing, analyzing, optimizing. You're never gonna, well, I'm not gonna say never because that's an absolute, but you don't just fall into perfection immediately.
No,
It
it does not
comes from
happen.
the trial and error, from the research, from making mistakes and picking yourself back up and then finding a way to do it better. And it's wow, that was powerful. That was powerful. Sorry, I get stuck on things. My ADHD brain is like, I could just talk with you forever. Okay, let's talk about branding.
Sure.
So, branding it's not a logo, right? Brand is not a logo. So my understanding is you've helped brands, like big and small brands, really find their voice. Is that right?
Mhm.
Would you say?
Yeah.
Am I okay?
Yeah.
Why do you think that clarity is often missing? Or do you think that clarity is often missing as you are working with different companies? And then how do you get it back? So, clarity in your brand, clarity in your message. Like, what does that mean to you? Let's start with that. And then why do you think that is?
So we kind of look at things kind of on a three-tier scale. You have your story, your narrative, and your brand. The story is just the stuff that happens that you want to tell. The narrative is the once upon a time and how you tell it. And then the brand, I say, is the swag. It's your logo, it's the website, it's the stuff people see and interact with. And, kind of that's the simple way to break these three things down. So a lot of times people haven't thought about the first two steps, that story and the narrative. So they kind of jump to, I need a logo. They
Okay.
jump to, I need a website, or we need to get brand recognition, or something along those lines. But what they're trying to communicate just hasn't been set yet. So you think, Apple, they started in a garage. Lots of companies, you say they started in a garage. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, he, was selling books out of his trunk and, was personally packaging them and mailing them. Those are the things people kind of remember. Again, they're the stories that those companies have told, and they've put it together very well. That brand element is what people see. And that's kind of what people focus on, the clients focus on, because it's tangible. You can have a contract or something, a statement of work that'll say, produce brand elements, logo, website, pen, whatever it is people want. It's tangible, it's quantifiable. The stuff behind it is much harder to quantify, but that's what goes into making the other stuff work.
All right. I'm tracking. Okay. So my husband, he does all of our branding projects and he's quite brilliant. And he has this like humongous questionnaire that asks you like if you were an animal or if your brand was an animal, what would it be? As you're saying this, because I'm always like, dude, this thing is too long. Again, ADHD. It's too
Yeah.
long. Like nobody wants to answer all these questions. But in that, they're telling their story.
He's getting
With
to the questions. He's getting to the information without asking direct questions, because people, if they see describe your brand in 5 words, they'll give you 5 adjectives. Fine.
yeah,
Tell me, pick an animal. If they pick elephant, okay, what's an elephant? You're thinking. If they pick dog, okay, why a dog? A dog isn't loyal. It's man's best friend. So, I look at our company. We're fractional. We're your best friend. We are there with you. So maybe my company would be a dog. I happen to be very involved in dog rescue, so I would love that if that were the case.
okay, okay. Oh, you know what? My husband's gonna love you because now I have to go be like, "I'm sorry, you were right." And I'll do it. I'll do it. And I know Tiffany, who's gonna help me edit this, she's gonna take that and she's gonna take that part and send it to him. Be like, "Ha ha, you were right." That's brilliant. Because storytelling is what it's all about in marketing,
Yeah.
right? It's like telling your story, telling your business story. And it's not like a personal story necessarily, but you're telling your story and building that brand reputation. And through that, again, you've got authenticity, you've got truth, you've got realism. And that's where people connect. And that's how you build those brand ambassadors, right?
Yeah. One thing that I really focus on is everything should be useful. So LinkedIn, if you're B2B, you just have a LinkedIn ad that just says, hire us. Is that useful? Not really. But if you have, a ad, LinkedIn has these where you could link to a document and it shows PDF, a guide. It takes you to a web
Mhm.
page that has, we have these on our website, quick guides. We have resource quizzes, one's for startups, another one that's a cybersecurity quiz. And it just tells you, do you have these things? So if you take people to those, that's much more useful. And people remember, hey, this was helpful. This company already helped me once.
I got it. Everything needs to be useful. Like, I'll just give an example. I talk about buyer personas a lot. So, like, you're building a buyer persona, right? You're actually identifying like all of the nitty gritties. Like, what is this person really needing? What are their pain points? What are their struggles? What things make them happy? Where do they work? Like, I break this down. And so I built out like a buyer persona, like builder. It's how how you actually create this avatar or buyer persona, depending on. And so they come to the page and they get something useful. Now I'm getting something in return, obviously their emails, but I'm providing them with a resource that only costs them probably their fake email address, you know what I mean? Or their spam email address, right? But it's only costing them their email address, but I'm providing them a lot of value with this. And from there, I believe that that's where you start to build that relationship. Like, I'm giving you something valuable. And if you continue to provide that usefulness and that value, that also is part of building those brand ambassadors, which is the cheapest form of marketing is building brand ambassadors and having people recommend you or your service. Am I on the right track there as to what you're saying? Really, it's
Definitely.
bringing the
Making
value.
things useful.
Yes.
Everything has some value. A billboard, is basically advertising. That's just a pure ad. You can't click on it. You can't do anything. But I've seen billboards now with QR codes, which I
Yeah.
always thought you better have a passenger because that could get dangerous if you don't.
Oh my gosh. I was just thinking those exact words in my head when you said billboards have QR codes. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can't scan that. Like, there's got to be somebody there. But
Yeah.
also, if you're sitting in rush hour traffic and you're not going anywhere, it's not impossible to pick up that phone and press the photo button and it'll see it from far away.
Yeah.
So
So
I
those
guess
could
it
be
depends
taking
on.
you somewhere useful.
Yes, somewhere useful where you're sitting there in traffic and you're stuck and you're bored. That touches right on that. So let's talk about change. What is your best advice for leaders who are maybe navigating through transitions and communicating those transitions effectively? Because change happens all the time. But
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of people are hesitant of change or afraid of change, even if it's for the better. So, do you see this in your day to day, like the fear of change?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just kind of got to go with it and eventually do it. Change is going to happen and we just got to push the button and hit go. Getting up to that, if you get as much buy-in as possible from as many stakeholders as you can. And again, that's kind of what we are doing with that shaping perception, with building trust, with the, across channels is if you need to say, hey, look, it's going live, you got to trust us, you've built that up. If you got to, modify a process that, gets you for your sales process. If it's, your brand, marketing processes, you've kind of already built that well of trust with those stakeholders. It's, investor relations, they have quite a large stake in, how this change happens. Yeah. So they're going to want to see it and getting them involved as early as possible and taking them and their feedback into account is something you really got to do. So that's a big part of it is just involving people. People want to know. They want to know why in a lot of cases, and they want to be involved. Even if they can't stop it, they can't do anything, including them is going to make things a lot easier.
Okay. So I guess an example I can use guys on this is, we build a lot of like large and like back end portals. We've done a lot for pharmaceutical companies. And so when you have a company that is used to using one system or one tool, and then you are just going to flip the switch on them and be like, okay, we've got something brand new, like that is a change that can cause a lot of like anxiety. So what we did is we got all of the staff some of the prescribers and some customers, and we got their feedback. What are the things that you need? What things are unnecessary? What things drive you nuts? What things make you happy? And we let them kind of give their feedback through the whole process. And doing that actually made the whole rollout so much easier, so much smoother than projects we had done before, which we didn't include the people who are using it every
Yeah.
day, right?
You
Like
got
the
to
people
include your
who are
users in
actually
that.
using it every day. It's important that you know what they need, but
Yeah.
that's the buy-in, right? That's
Yeah.
where,
That's fine. But also, if you just take their feedback and you're not really interested in it, they figure that out relatively fast.
yes.
But, it's a portal. If you don't know what the problem is from the people who use it every day, then you won't create a better one. I'll give an example. This is something I'm just using right now myself. I won't name it because I'm about to criticize them. Is I have, I open most things in new tabs, like many of
Mhm.
us do. So I hold down the shortcut key on my computer, I click, and I open in a new tab. This particular platform, if you do that, will log you out only in the new tab. So the new tab doesn't take you where you want to go. It takes you to a login screen. But if you just click it, it opens up in a new tab perfectly.
I
So
open everything in a new tab so I can stay organized to remember the
yeah,
things I need to do, right? Like,
yeah,
okay, I can't get to this right now, but I know I need to do it. So I'm going to open it in another tab in my CRM. Oh, that would be awful.
yeah. So I was in this the other day and I kept doing it. And I had to then remember this is how this platform works. If that company were to just do a standard, update, but not talk to their users, they would never know about this little bug.
Talk to your users, talk to your people. Guys, I think what he just said there is phenomenal. You need to write it down. Ultimately, ask questions.
Yeah.
Ask questions of the people who are there by your side every single day, working alongside with you. Ask questions of your clients. Ask questions of people that you meet in the community. Like, what would you think about this? Like, why not? Why not? Ask questions.
Most of
Freaking brilliant.
my projects, they start out with, like your husband has that, long questionnaire.
Mhm.
It starts with me asking questions of a client. What are your goals? How do you want to accomplish this? Do you have preferences? What have you done before? My favorite answer to that is we've done nothing. We're a clean slate. Unfortunately, that is the rarest answer I get.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I love on the rare occasions that I do get that. It's a lot of asking questions. There's never you can just jump in and start. We have to get information first. We have to do research first. We have to know, unless you want people running blind into what they're doing,
But then you're
we
not
have to
building a brand.
know. Then you're not building a brand. You're just kind of
Got a logo.
touching things. Maybe you get a logo out of it, or you get draft logos at the very least that you have to
At the
decide
very
on.
least. But what I mean by that is the brand is the story where a logo is just almost a placeholder. And
Yeah.
you guys don't want to be a placeholder, right? You want to be an authority in your industry. So build that brand, build that message, and do so by finding out what other people think.
And it's an important placeholder, that logo. It is what
It is.
people recognize. It is that first thing people will see. So it's important, but it's not everything.
Ooh. It's important, but it's not everything. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Okay. So for entrepreneurs trying to connect their audiences, right, in this noisy digital world, like what communication strategies do you think actually work? Or do you have maybe some tips or tricks on how to start identifying what that message should be? Other than obviously
Yeah.
hiring you guys and bringing you on
Hire us.
board.
Yes.
And
That's the first thing you should
that's the
do.
first step.
One of them is very important. We've talked about this a lot in this conversation, is authenticity. People will figure out if you are kind of just selling them a bill of goods. If you're just empty, people will figure that out eventually. So definitely be authentic with them. I'd say
All
that's
right.
one of the most important things. But also
Uh,
know who you're trying to reach.
your
Know
avatar.
who you're trying to reach. And if you are, I do a lot of B2B. So LinkedIn is one of those kind of just common for me is they let you you could do a lot of targeting, title,
Okay.
seniority, years of experience, city. You could really get detailed. So understand it. But also, if you have someone in mind, realize they might not have filled that out correctly. So you might be missing them because they think of themselves differently than all that data.
Keywords. Oh, that's
And
great.
that's really hard to get around because then it's behavior, and that is, again, not the most reliable when it comes to tracking. It can be very good, but it can also, in the same way, lead you astray. So combine a lot of data points.
So I do a live every week. It's called Fix Your Funnel Fridays with my friend Tony Stark Polici. And the number one funnel failure, according to my research, is not understanding your audience. It starts there. No matter what you do
Yeah.
or what you're doing, it starts there. And
I would
that
say it
is
starts
the
with
number one
knowing who they
failure.
are. Understanding them comes after. First, you have to know who they
Yes.
are.
Oh, all right. Yep. And that's where you
Then you
build
can
up. Right.
understand them. And
Yes.
another one I would say is, and this is a statistic that's been quoted for at least 50 years. So maybe it's true, maybe it's apocryphal, is it takes 7 to 14 touch points for someone to take an action.
Yes.
And again, maybe that was true 50 years ago and it's changed now. The statistic is still out there, but it's a big enough range. Probably if it was true then, it's true now.
Mhm.
7 to 14. I think it might be more now because there's so much that where you can engage with people that people are just seeing more. So even if they get it, they might not actually be processing or internalizing or even really seeing it.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it might be a higher number now, but if you're thinking you will send one email to someone and suddenly they will respond, yes, I'm buying. Could it happen? Absolutely, it does. I'm sure it happens every day. Is it the most common? No. Mostly you will be sending a lot of things. And that's where newsletters are great because you can be useful in those newsletters, providing links to your persona identifier, to the types of quizzes I have, to all of that. You could be providing industry news. You could really be useful
Okay.
in that context. So that's helpful and people see it, even if they don't open it. Your subject line can be useful. They see the company name.
Mhm.
Those are all touch points.
That
So
is a
it
tough
might take 14 to 21, 14 to 50 now might be the number, but it is almost never one. It does happen. I've had it happen, but it is far less common than someone who
It's
gets
not
your
the killer.
newsletter for 6 months and then it's like, now I need to buy
Mhm.
Beltway services. Now is when I'm really looking for an agency that does Facebook ads. So that's far more realistic. And that is, again, why we focus so much on that shaping perception and building trust long term, because we know it is a long term process to scale and grow.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. Oh, 100%. I think when I started, what they said is it took at least 3 to 5, and that was, like I said, 17 years ago.
Mhm.
And then I did a series called Sales: What They Don't Teach You in School with a friend of mine. His name is Ron Koningsberg. And he sells commercial properties up in New York. And he said that he can guarantee it takes at
Yeah.
least 6 touch points on average. And he said, and that can go up to 20, really, but it depends on how you make those touch points, right? If you're picking up the phone and calling somebody, that's a little bit different interaction than them just getting an email in their
Oh,
inbox,
yeah.
right? Or them just seeing a Facebook post. So it kind of depends on the medium that you're using, but you're spot on. You got to keep, like, that's what nurture sequences are for, people.
And that phone call might not even be really a sales call.
No,
I mean, it is, but
right.
hey, just checking in. How are you doing? How are those goals we talked about? I'm not trying to sell you something in this call. I just want to know how this is going for you. And of course, they know what you're calling about.
They
And I know that's going to sound contradictory to the be honest point, but they see you, they kind of know you are there because you have a product that will help them, and you want to know about how things are going because you have a product that will help them. But you don't have to hit the hard sell. They
No.
know.
Yep. If
And
you're
maybe
again,
it takes 6 months of phone calls. Maybe it takes
yeah,
a call every 6 months. It's just going to depend on you, that client or that prospect, your product, what's going on in that case. So just because you see something online that says, here's how to close deals on, one website visit, not going to be the norm for a lot of businesses. It might be how, Amazon sells books, but it's not necessarily how you're going to sell, you know, commercial property in New York.
yep. My cheeks hurt. I really enjoy talking to you. My cheeks hurt from smiling so much. I've got 2 more questions for you. So it's called Iconic Entrepreneurs. It originally was Innovative Entrepreneurs, but I rebranded. What I like to ask is, has there been somebody in your life, a mentor or a client or a project even maybe, that has significantly shaped the way you lead and serve others?
Yes, there's probably been a few. One of them was a few years ago, and I won't name the name of the client because I don't want to, get them embarrassed on this. But there was, a client who very much did not like to listen to advice. And
That never
no,
happens.
but getting this client to really focus, we had to learn a lot. So that was particularly helpful
Oh, I
in
love
that,
that.
different ways of getting this client just to focus and stay on message. And that was hard to do. And it took a lot of trial and error to figure out what is going to work in this particular instance. It made a huge difference overall. There was my old teacher, the one who said, just, walk over and
Yep.
stand there, start recording, look like you belong. So there have been a lot over the years that definitely have, made that kind of a difference.
I love that you say a client who was, we're just going to say, a pain in the ass, right? But you learned from them on how to communicate differently. Like they taught you something new because you had to figure it out during that journey on how to get them to be successful or to reach their own goals. I love that. It was somebody who made things a little bit of a struggle for you, but you took that as a lesson on how you can improve for the next time.
Yep.
And I think that is brilliant. I think that is just phenomenal. Tell me about like how can people learn more or connect with you and kind of explore your work at Beltway.Media, and like who is your avatar? Who are you looking for?
Yeah. So I'll start with, how you can reach me. Email me. It's probably the best way to reach me. jaltman@beltway.media. No .com, just .media. Probably the best way. You could also find me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/Joshua I. Altman. Our company is, /company/Beltway-media.
Okay.
So those are ways that you can reach me.
We'll
Again,
make sure those are
email,
all in the show notes, guys.
Email, probably best, jaltman@beltway.media. And, we work with small and medium businesses primarily. So if you are in that, small, medium stage, you're looking to grow, definitely we can help you. If you are, a startup, also generally small to medium, scale up size, growth stage, that's who we help. You don't have to be a company that's like, we're a tech startup raising Series A. If you're a small, local, regional business, that's also right there for us. Because a lot of these types of companies have similar needs. And because of their size, don't necessarily have the full-time internal capacity or even need for a communications leader like we provide. They might have a marketing manager who handles some Facebook ads and they do a great job with it. Or they might have someone who's handling their social media, but not that senior level person who is looking at all of that as part of a bigger strategy.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Joshua. I'll make sure all of your links and that email, guys, people don't normally just give out their email, so take advantage of that. And thank you again. This has been really fun. I enjoyed learning from you. I mean it. I said I would in the
Thank you.
beginning, and I sure the hell did. All right, everybody, thank you so much again. This is Joshua Altman, Beltway.Media. He is a badass. Go check him out. Well, that is a wrap on today's episode of Iconic Entrepreneurs. Thank you for spending time with us. If this episode sparked a shift, don't let it fade. Replay it, write it down, and take action. Whether it was a mindset shift, or maybe a branding revelation, or maybe just a simple insight or a tool that you can use in your everyday life. The question is, what will you build with it? If you're ready to grow smarter, not just harder, subscribe now, leave a review, and head over to weareiconiq.com. That is weareiconiq.com to explore how we help entrepreneurs like you scale with clarity and strategy that actually works. This is more than a podcast. It's a blueprint for becoming iconic in your own lane. This is iconiQ, built beyond the expected.